Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Will Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and for today's episode of Suki Nihon for Area DMG, we're looking at episode 25 of season 3, Bubbled. Bubbled. One thing I want to know, no spiky bubbles in this one, but stretchy bubbles apparently. Interesting. I wonder if he can make, Steven can make square bubbles, you know. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Or diamond-shaped bubbles. Or pink elephant bubbles. Yes. Why doesn't Steven start trying to do that? Being like, I can change these bubbles. Why not change these into different things? We'll see what they do. Could be interesting. So, Steven is still wandering space in a bubble now because essentially, Steven's like, flipping over, and then boop! Trapping air in there so he can kind of live. Wandering the universe in a bubble. Life is but a dream. Well, until Steven bumps into Eyeball, which is the ruby with one eye, and one eye that's a gem. Very piratey, if you ask me. A couple decent little jokes. Those two obviously don't really like each other because now, well, the other rubies are pretty much dead. Well, they can breathe out in space, but they're just going to keep tumbling end over end over end over end over end until they either land on another planet, burn up on another planet, get hit by horrible space debris, Planet Test style, which, by the way, if you have access to older anime series like Planet Test, check that one out. That is a series that I didn't collect when it came out, and I really wish I had because they had 2 disc sets where the second disc was all NASA stuff because the whole show was about space junk. How literally the opening is like a screw coming off of a satellite and just kind of going, and then eventually it takes out an entire space liner, mainly because space debris is actually dangerous. You find out from like the International Space Station and from people who've been in space that the worst possible thing is orbiting space material. Space junk. Space junk. It's bad. It ruins things. It's actually lethal. Also, check out the movie Gravity. That was such a good movie. I really liked it, and part of this made me think of that just a little bit. Oh, I did like that joke where Steven's looking at his cell phone and is like, I get no service, but I'm right next to a satellite. First thing I do when I get back to Earth is change my cell phone provider. And I'm like, that is some, yeah, when your joke is just right. Anywho, eventually, they drift into an asteroid field, and after kind of dodging that, you see the ruby Eyeball kind of hamster wheels Steven's bubble around a bit, and then eventually they're like, yeah, we live, and then boom, space junk. Knocks Ruby out, rather, Eyeball out, and Eyeball's floating. And Steven's like, wait a second, okay, stretchy bubble, go! Grabs Eyeball, pulls Eyeball in, and Eyeball is cracked. Ew, that's a really uncomfortable sentence. Because, like, eyeballs don't really, they're kind of like a jelly, like a grape. Anyways, Steven convinces Eyeball to let him heal Eyeball's eye gem. So in a wonderful eyeball licking sequence similar to Boogie Pop Phantom, Steven heals Eyeball, and the Eyeball realizes, wait, Rose Quartz could heal her soldiers, which is something none of the other gems could do, and that's how she was able to keep such a small force against such a large force. You see, I don't believe that the Homeworld gems have a concept of medicine. They have a concept of damage, but not a concept of repair, which is something that happens when you eliminate, quote, undesirables, end quote, from your society. Well, the problem with eugenics is that you essentially phase out medicine to a point where even a common cold could be something horribly lethal because you don't have that variance of type, that variance of genetics to combat these. You see, there are literally billions of types of flu. Literally billions. Variations of all kinds, and the almost infinite amount, well, not really infinite, more like somewhere in the billion range, of variations of these flus and how they affect people. But if you eliminated people who you felt were the weaker part of society, that's actually what society needs. What I'm saying is that society as a whole needs to have people of varying strengths and weaknesses. We need a diversity of population because of science and medicine. Medicine exists because of that variance. We have all different ways to look at things. We have all different ways to react to those. We have all sorts of different amazing genetic profiles, and those can be used to help everyone as a whole. It's like I think it's e pluribus unum, which is like from many few or for many few. Yeah, like for example, those of us that this is kind of a hard concept to pull through. Okay, everyone is different and special and unique in some way. Not in ways that are necessarily always good, but in ways that benefit society as a whole. The crystal gems developed the ability to heal these and use this as a way of fixing and helping and making themselves stronger because they're able to not just reform, but also to be repaired. The homeworld gems did not develop medicine because they saw, well, something is weak or damaged. Instead of fixing this and making this better, because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, they instead shattered those. In other words, you eliminated the ability to progress by using eugenics or a eugenic style. Yeah. So the advantage here was you had sheer numbers, but then you had better numbers. In Steven Universe, Rose Quartz is more of a quality and drive over quantity. Kind of like, here's my army! In, say, the Street Pass Plaza games for the Nintendo 3DS. Let's say you send out, think of all of these homeworld gems as a large army of rock facing up against an army less than half that size of paper. You know, in the great little game, Rock, Paper, Scissors, Lizard, Spock, paper destroys rock. Like, wraps rock. Bah! It's super effective against it. And that works because Rose Quartz took the time to continue to expand and strengthen. Instead of destroying a weakness, you find that weakness and then you make that no longer a weakness. You use that weakness to become strong. Anywho, after Steven heals Eyeball, Eyeball is like, "Ah, you are Rose Quartz! Yay! I'm gonna kill you now!" So, in a pretty funny little sequence, they're running around the inside of this bubble, and then eventually they end up in a bit of a tussle, and you have Eyeball just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna gouge out Steven's gem." And Steve's like, "Wait, what would that do to me?" Because even Steven doesn't know what would happen there at that point. Seriously, and I don't think anyone does. Well, except for the creators. They know what might happen. I don't. I can only speculate that he'd probably just be human. He would lose all these little abilities. He might be very weak. It might cause him to actually age up to his proper age form. I don't know. We'll have to investigate that in the future. Or not. We might never know. Unless Rebecca Sugar wants to be like, okay, here's what would happen. We probably won't know or find out in this series. So after this bit of a tussle, Steven ends up in kind of a knife in the water situation, throwing Eyeball out of the bubble. And then Steve's like, well, crud. And Steve curls up and then is finally rescued by the rest of the Crystal Gems, who explain that yes, Rose Quartz shattered Pink Diamond. Or as this bit of dialogue was like, she didn't always do what was best for her, but she always did what was best for Earth. And then of course Steven's like, even if that means shattering someone? And then Garnet's like, yes. Steve's like, thanks for telling me. And I was just like, that works, it works. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. You can't save the Earth without shattering at least one diamond. And looking back at the whole Bismuth episode, that's really what Rose Quartz's issue was with. You see, all life means something, and therefore, all death should mean something too. At least to honor that life, all death should mean something. The death of Pink Diamond was meant to end that conflict, to prevent further death on both sides. It was a strategic assassination. In short, one must die so many may live. Bismuth's approach was, let's kill them all. Let's kill everything. Let's take all of them out. But that's not what you need to do. You start a war with, this is my little quote for this. You start a war with bombs, bullets, and bayonets. You end a war with books, bread, and buildings. Which means, essentially, while war is a violent measure, the point of war you should have an end game in mind. You should be like, okay, you take this out, and then you deal with this through pacification. In other words, that's kind of what we did wrong in many of our foreign policy things. We look at the figurehead and we're like, we take out this figurehead, but once you do that, once you take out a figurehead, you have to find a way to prevent the spread of that figurehead's influence through books and bread and buildings, through charity and mercy, through love. Bismuth's thing was like, let's kill them all. Where Rose was more like, we've shattered enough. It's one thing to take out a figurehead and another thing to martyr them. And it looks like what happened with Pink Diamond is that Rose Quartz martyred her, which wasn't her intention. It did not work out the way that Rose Quartz wanted it to. And then the final corruption as the Homeworld Gems fled Earth was insult to injury at that point. A complete and utterly unnecessary retaliation for what could have been a more diplomatic assassination. It wasn't used in the right way. And that's really Rose's sin in that regard. I do have to say something though. They have a ship now, which means that Steven Universe has a ship. Now, a lot of Steven Universe, like for example, a lot of Steven Universe takes bits and pieces of some other show. Literally. In Invader Zim, everyone's run by the tallest. The diamonds are in charge because guess what? They're the tallest. Size is a thing here. Like people have, like Peridot's whole limb extensions and enhancers and whatnot are literally a reference to Invader Zim. And now Invader Zim got canceled way too soon. In fact, this is the special edition set, so it's got the audio only sections from the unproduced episodes. So you have a little bit of early preliminary sketches, but all the audio was recorded. And what happened in Invader Zim, spoilers I guess, Gaz fixed Tak's ship, and eventually the basic idea was that Dib and Tak and eventually Zim and such would end up on other planets in some of these episodes. You go Adventures into Space, it would be kind of like they're Defiant. And now Steven Universe has its Defiant, which of course is a Star Trek Voyager reference. Or is it? No, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I think that was the one with the Defiant. A lot of Star Trek after Star Trek Next Generation kind of blurs together for me. Mainly because I like the original series as an animated series quite a bit. And then I liked Next Generation a lot, except for some characters. There are many characters who are like, oh my gosh, even when I was young, I did not like some of these characters. And then we get to Deep Space Nine, I'm like, oh, I like Odo. I like this character and this character. I like this captain. This is good. And that one kind of meanders for a bit. It was kind of a bad deal. And then Voyager came out. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But it took a while for Voyager to get up to anywhere. And then Enterprise. What was up with Enterprise? That one was a weird one. I'm looking forward to a new Star Trek thing. But yes, they have a ship now in Steven Universe. They can go to other planets. Other worlds. Yes! So I'm pretty happy about that. Because they can do that now. They have a ship. They can go. They could take the fight to Homeworld, which they're not going to do. They might, but they might not. I mean, seriously, I don't see Steven becoming we need to shatter the other 3 gems. Because that just doesn't seem, diamonds. That doesn't seem to be in Steven's character, and I hope they're not building him toward that. That would be a little bit of betrayal of that character. Overall, I thought this was a pretty good episode, though. Funny in spots, touching in spots, and overall, it's nice that, I think the most important thing here is that Garnet and Pearl finally came clean and honest with Steven about what Rose Quartz did. And that's good. I like this episode. What do you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you go ahead, thumbs up, like this particular video. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.